was gonna tell a story about the tree kick at Pastrana Land. It's probably the most common question. So I want to make an explanation video of start to finish because everyone just sees the footage of that and no one really knows the backstory or how it happened. So from that jump was built for a triple backflip. So Travis Pastrana and Josh Sheehan and a couple others at the time were gonna kind of be in this competition to do the world's first triple backflip. And then Josh, of course, ended up completing that on that same jump, which is insane. But that was the first day of testing, like many years ago on a ramp that was so janky and sketchy. And we had spent like a few days just kind of getting that ramp into place. But it was definitely like the world's biggest FMX ramp ever built for tricks, as far as like, it just, you needed that size, you needed that you know, trajectory for height. So from the starting point, like, you know, I'd helped them put this ramp in place, and then we put the airbag up, and there was a lot of like conversations being had. It's like you and I sitting right here, having this conversation. We were like talking about, you know, how is it going to work? How is this whole thing going to really like end up working out? And we didn't know. So like those guys just started having a session. It was, a lot of different, like, you know, pro motocross guys there, that were sessioning this thing, trying to figure it out. Actually, not a lot. There was like maybe 3 or 4. Everyone else was like, not a chance. I'll not do that. So me being me, and, you know, like obviously, when Travis and I get around each other, I kind of get convinced that things make sense that probably don't make sense. And I'm like, okay, like they're sessioning, and then I'm sitting there, and I kind of under my breath, but not really. I was like, because I obviously don't have as much, you know, freestyle motocross experience as those guys. Like, of course, I've been riding a long time, but like as far as hitting ramps go and different things, like I literally have none. You know, like I can send it on a dirt bike, but you know, as far as like timing goes and different important things that you need to have experience under your belt for, to hit a jump like that, like zero. I could say 0. And so I'm just sitting there with Travis and Josh, and I'm like, just kind of watching. And I had previously, earlier that day, actually got a concussion on my BMX bike. I like smoked my head, and just, yeah, like was really pretty dazed. But I didn't really say anything about it. I was fine. And I was just sitting there talking with Josh and Travis. And then I think we watched somebody hit it, and I was like, if it came down to it, I bet I'd hit that thing. like talking like life or death situation, like someone had a gun to your head and they're like, hit that jump. I'd be like, okay, I think I got it, you know? And, but it was funny, like earlier in the day, I was texting my girlfriend, like, look at how gnarly this jump is. And she's like, oh my gosh, like you would never hit that, right? Like you're not gonna, and I was like, absolutely not. Like not in a million years would I hit that thing. And then she's like, okay, good. Like, I'm just making sure, like, you know, you never know with you, but like, don't do that. You know, I'm like, absolutely not. So then I'm like, standing there watching these guys. And then like, I don't know, one thing leads to another. And I'm sitting there with Travis, and Travis is like, well, hey, we're going to start tearing this thing down, because the week was over. The whole week of testing was done. He's like, we're going to start tearing down the airbag and like taking the jump down. He's like, if you actually want to hit this thing, like now's your chance, because we're going to take it down. And like at first I was like, the whole thing kind of came from like, no, absolutely not, to me being concussed, to me saying if it came down to a life or death decision, I would hit it, to then him being like, hey, if you do want to hit it, like there was no pressure. He's not like, you know, people I think get that wrong with that. I'm not afraid to say no. I think a lot of people in those situations can feel pressured to do things that they normally wouldn't do. But I always know, like, you know, no one's going to force me, unless it's a life or death thing, like to hit this jump. No one's going to force me to do that. So Travis genuinely was just like, hey, if you feel like hitting this, do it. And I was like, I think I'm good, you know? And then I was looking at it and I was like, you know what? Like, when do you ever get an opportunity to hit a jump like this? Like, and the opportunity is here. So fine. Like, and Travis was walking away. He was like gonna go, and I was like, hey, like, what bike should I use? And he just shook his head like with this smirk of just like, you dummy, you know? And I'm like, no, really, like, what bike should I use? So I go back. He's like, go grab a helmet and go grab some boots and stuff. So I go back to the shop, grab a bike, like, set me up. And then we go into the woods. Like, the whole run-in for this jump is like through the woods, through this back like ravine. And then you're just looking at this wall. Like, you're going like straight for like, I don't know, maybe 1,000 feet. And then it is literally like a 30-foot ramp that's like just a wall. And you're just like, what in the world? Like, what? So I go back into the woods with him, and he's like showing me the whole run-in. And the run-in is gnarlier than the jump completely, because you have to like kind of get your way through these trees and then jump this river, and then go through all this craziness, which is like no worries for any of those guys, but like for me, you know, I'm like, and then focus. So he's like, all right, you're gonna come through the woods here, jump the stream here, get it into third gear, and just go as fast as you can. I'm like, okay, like, seems simple enough. So I do one run up at it, and it felt pretty good. And then I have this switch, with action sports related things, where once you're committed, at least me, like, once you're committed, it's like, it's on. Like, you can't, there's no turning back. It's like this weird, it's hard to explain, but in my mind, it's this thing where it's like almost fight or flight mode kicks in a way where it's like my commitment level has gone so, and I've experienced this quite a bit throughout my, action sports career and life. Is like, once you're in, and you know this, like, once you're in, and you can't go back. And so this time he's like, make sure you click third, jump the river, and just pin it. So I jumped the river, and I didn't think I clicked third. I think I only got to second.
I think it only went into second.
But before the river, I was already in that commitment mind. I was already like, you're going 100%. There's no turning back. But I had already full pinned it. I thought I was in second. I was like, okay, second it is. Like, and I'm just pinning it, thinking I'm in second. Luckily, by the grace of God, I was in third. Because had I only been in second, those guys later told me, he's like, you wouldn't have had a chance, dude. You would have landed, like, you wouldn't even have come close. So that third gear was really crucial that I didn't even think I had. But I was like, you know what? It's too late. Boom, full throttle. And I hit that jump as fast as I could, and as soon as I hit the lip, I just buckled my legs. Everything just gives out. The compression was so gnarly that I hit the thing, the whole entire bike bottoms out, and then just spring loads me. But what those guys didn't tell me, or care to tell me, is that the whole entire ramp, okay, like, if you watch that video, I go off to the right, and like I just drift to the right away. The ramp, and like, these guys are to deny it because they don't notice, because they're that good at riding, they never even needed to like notice that. But the whole ramp was crooked. Like, I don't care what anyone says, that ramp was crooked. I looked at it afterwards, and the whole ramp was sideways. So when I hit it straight on, it just bucks me to the right. And those guys are so talented and know, like, that they were overcompensating without even realizing it, to make sure they hit it in a straight line. But me, I just hit it as it came to me, and all of a sudden it happened so fast that, like, I just remember like pinning it as fast as I could, hitting the ramp, and then like a millisecond later, I am just floating in space. I'm just like up in the air, and I see when you're in that mindset of like literally like fight or flight, life or death, everything slows down so much. You're like, a second feels like an hour, and you're just in this time frame of like where you can see things so clearly, and you can see futuristic things. You can see what's about to happen. So as soon as I hit the ramp, I eject the bike, completely natural instinct to just get away from the bike because I saw that it was going to the right and I wanted to move to the left. But I'm flying, and so as I'm in the air just floating, I saw about 5 seconds into the future of, okay, you're heading straight for that tree, and I'm gonna grab the tree. I'm literally gonna grab the tree and just hold on to the tree. But then my mind came back and said, no, that's not gonna work because you're gonna be hitting the tree at such a velocity of speed that you're not gonna be able to hold on. You're gonna bounce off the tree and you won't, and that's gonna screw you up. So I'm like, okay, abandon that plan. And it's crazy, as I tell this story, your mind slows down to such a degree that you are literally like considering every option in a millisecond. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna grab the tree. Nope, that's not gonna work. So I'm like, okay, try to swim to the airbag. Like literally try to swim through the air to the airbag. And then as I was going that way, I was like, okay, you're still headed for the tree. So I'm looking at the tree going, and the tree, by the way, I was so bummed out I wasn't wearing a GoPro for this, because if only the viewer could see what I saw, is I'm headed straight for the woods. Like, the airbag's here, and I'm headed for this tree. I was gonna try to grab the tree. That wouldn't have worked. So I'm literally headed in like a 45-degree angle between the tree and the airbag. I'm headed straight for the woods. And it's like probably 60 or 70 feet to just dirt, like hard dirt and you know, logs and trees that have fallen over, and just like, I would have, if I wouldn't have been dead, I probably would have wished I was dead.
And in the air, I was like, it happened so quick. I'm up there, I'm like, oh, I'm just floating, and I'm like 50 feet in the air, and I'm gonna miss the airbag. And then I tried to kick off the tree, but I'm still alive. This is a very talented We're going the rest of the week.
And I'm just floating, and I'm like, oh, you're still headed for the tree. I didn't get enough, but I'm like, oh, you can kick off the tree. If you kick off the tree, you'll be able to get to the airbag. So as I'm approaching the tree, I didn't get enough, like, I'm getting picky here, but I didn't have enough kick. I didn't get as much kick as I wanted, but I still saw, like, oh, you can have some kick. So I just remember extending my leg, like with my tippy toes, as much as I possibly could to just get a little trajectory, like a little just, ugh. And I remember kicking as hard as I could, and I felt the little just, boom, hit the tree branch, and I saw that I just got just enough. So I hit the side of the airbag, and I'm like, oh great, I'm headed for the ground. Something's like falling from however high. And I'm like, oh, because I've landed on plenty of airbags, and like, if you don't land close to the middle, you're gonna hit the ground, 100%. So I just kicked it, and then I'm like, oh, I'm headed for this is gonna hurt so bad, because I knew I was still gonna hit the ground. By the grace of God, I literally like kicked just enough, got just enough airbag to not hit the ground. It saved my fall just enough. And then I'm in the airbag laying there, and I'm like, you're alive. Like, you're okay. What? What? How are you here? And like, I just remember climbing through the airbag and walking up, and everyone was down below watching, and I'm just like claiming it, just like, oh my gosh, like, you're here, you're alive, you did it. You know, you did it, like, you're here. So, a lot of people were actually really angry at me for doing that. A lot of people were angry at Travis for doing that. It's all good. Like, I looked at Travis, and I'm like, and he trusts me in that way. He's like, I got it. I think I got this. And even though I barely had it, still did it. And let's just say that after that, everyone put that airbag down and took the ramp off pretty fast. And then when they came back and redesigned the whole ramp, and then that ramp ended up working out really well for those guys. But I was happy to walk away from that first session and have a good story from it. So I hope you enjoyed this story, and thanks for listening to it. We'll see you next time. Up the ramp, and it was so compressed that all of a sudden I like don't remember anything, and then I'm just floating in the air, and then I see the tree coming, and I'm like, I'm gonna try to kick off the tree because I thought I was gonna miss the airbag.
But you had enough awareness to kick off the tree. That was amazing.
Oh, thank you.
You're alive!